Hey guys, welcome back. I know it's been a while since we've done an episode. We're on episode 14 of TechBus, where we talk about technology and business. Today's episode, we're here with Tim Weidman. He's the Director of Technology Services at Frankel Zacharia. We're going to talk about a couple of things, security, IT services, and even get into talk about blockchain a little bit. So thanks for coming on the show, Tim.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yep, thanks. So to start off with, Tim, maybe tell us a little bit about who you are and what is Frankel Zacharia's tech services all about?
Sure. And as you mentioned, I'm the Director of Technology Services for Frankel Zacharia. Now, Frankel Zacharia is a CPA firm. I'm not a CPA. I'm surrounded by them at all times. The firm itself has been there for decades, 60 years. So it's been an integral part of the Omaha business community for quite some time. My division has only sprung up in the last 7 or 8 years, and we provide technology services most of the time to our client base, to our accounting clients, but you don't have to be an accounting client for us to work with you. That's probably 80% of our business right now. But we're part of the CPA firm, so just like the firm offers, tax services or audit services or bookkeeping or payroll services, we also offer technology services to the Omaha community and to our accounting clients as well.
How did that happen?
Well, it's actually more common than you might think. Yeah. Part of the reason people aren't aware of it is when you're part of a CPA firm, you have kind of a built-in market there. So you don't do a lot of marketing or advertising, nor do some of the other divisions of CPA firms. Some of the big four now has the larger accounting firms in the world have their own technology divisions. Many accounting firms have big or small. We were a little ahead of the curve, but it's happening more and more. And the reason is it's a very logical fit. So technology now, really has become a part of many things that we do, especially if you're a business owner. And many of our clients are the business community. And if you have a business or if you have an organization, your bookkeeping and your accounting and your technology may be close together, closely merged there. So when I first came to the firm, they approached me and said, we have a lot of clients that ask us technology questions. They want to give us their reports, but they can't because their computer service doesn't work. So, and this was actually the firm's idea to start this technology services division, as part of the CPA service suite that we offer. And it's worked out very well for our clients. It's worked out well for us as a firm as well.
Yep. So it didn't start out like supporting the internal infrastructure of the firm at first, or was it actually like a client request?
Great question, and we do that as well. So when I started there, that was the intention was, the firm had grown. We've grown in size quite a bit, and that was part of why I came to the firm. But the other reason was to intentionally start this division, at some point. It took us a couple years, to really get things situated and talk about how to do it. Our first client was someone that came to us with an emergency, and they said, we're moving on Friday. We really didn't think about our technology. Is there anything we need to do? And it was a very quick deadline, so we were able to step in and help them get the things done. And after that, it's just me for the first year or two, and now there's 14 of us or so, depending on who you count. And so it's grown quite a bit, since that first client.
And do you guys have like a particular size of company that it's like the sweet spot for your services, or is it?
Great question. It depends on the services that we're offering. For some of our services, really, there is no size limit. Kind of the sweet spot, we can go pretty small and smaller than a lot of technology companies because of the way we're set up. So some of our clients are, small law firms or dental offices with only 4 or 5 computers. Our largest clients right now are in, maybe 200 to 300 seats. And that we offer some services to where they're spread across the country. But it depends on the type of service that we're offering at that time.
Okay. Is a lot of the trend like going to like Office 365, cloud, off-premises?
Absolutely. And I'm a big believer in cloud services, but again, for the right situation. A couple things about our division. One is that we offer a pretty wide spectrum of services. So we do, for example, managed services, help desk services where we take care of all the technology for our clients. We also do project services to where we just step in once a year and we help them rebuild servers or a lot of migrations, data migrations, accounting migrations, system migrations, and as well as cybersecurity services, which we'll talk a little more about. So depending on, that makes it a little bit different because we don't offer kind of a cookie cutter approach. So Office 365, I think is great for nearly everybody anymore, but there may be a situation where that just doesn't fit. So depending on the client, those cloud services more and more, are reaching maturity and really becoming more of a standard than an exception.
Okay. So you had mentioned that just depends on the client, what they're going with. And then you also mentioned something about security. That was kind of what got me thinking about doing this episode, because I've heard of other firms that do this sort of thing, IT managed services, setting up computers, virus scan stuff. But it seemed like you guys were really kind of focusing on the security aspect of it. And I haven't heard of a lot of people maybe taking that as a primary focus. Can you talk a little bit to the types of security services that you guys offer?
Sure, and again, we do a lot of different services. Several years ago, I shifted my focus a little more towards cybersecurity. So if I'm out in the field working, boots on the ground, hands-on, most of the time that's the type of work I do. About 3 years ago, I've been in the industry a while, and cybersecurity has changed a lot. And our clients started approaching us more and more with security issues. So we kind of started a little sub-area, a little subdivision with a focus on cybersecurity services. I went back to some training, became something called a certified ethical hacker, where you're trained in how to actually attack systems. You have to break into systems you have no access to successfully in order to achieve that, and really started studying how can our clients best defend themselves in today's cybersecurity environment. And so we've been able to offer a lot of different things. The first thing that the thing we offer, hopefully less and less, is incident response. So we sometimes get called in when it's another provider, maybe another MSP or an internal IT person, where they're in uncharted territory. They have a loss, they're down, they can't recover, their data's gone. And we often will get called in to kind of help rescue that situation as an incident response. So there's an actual problem. We need to solve it. We need to remove the malware or fight the attack, whatever it might be. The thing I'd like to offer is preventative services, which the biggest one we offer there, we do security reviews. We'll come in and work with an IT person or another firm and review things kind of from top to bottom and point out things that we've seen that can help make that organization more secure. The security awareness training is my favorite thing to offer because I think it's the most effective. It's preemptive. It's not in response to a loss. I hate seeing organizations that have already suffered a loss. And for that, we come in and work with the individual people, usually the entire organization, and go through hands-on, up-to-date things that their staff can do to help make the organization more safe, to help add to their cyber defense strategy.
Well, one of the things about security I would think would be a challenge is that people don't really think about it until you have to. Is that a hard sell, like with a lot of business owners saying they don't really see the value of it because they don't think it's ever going to happen to them? Or do you find that trend more and more people are kind of becoming aware that preventative maintenance around security is actually worth the investment?
It depends on the situation. Now, there's a lot more loss going on due to cybersecurity attacks than most people are aware of. Depending on the statistics you look at, Symantec, for example, came out with statistics last year that said 50% of the businesses in the United States of America, 50% of the businesses in our country suffered a loss from a cybersecurity attack last year. And the issue is, it's one of those things you don't really want to talk about. Nobody wants to go on and, it's not on your website saying we offer this service and that service, and by the way, we just lost all of our data for the past year because we encountered ransomware. So it's kind of hushed up a little bit so you don't hear about it. But when I go in to talk to somebody for the first time, I know, and this holds up pretty good, there's a 50% chance that I'm talking to a decision maker whose company has suffered a loss in the last 12 to 24 months. So, and that's a scary statistic. I hate that statistic, but I find it to be true. So there's at least half of a chance that I don't have to build that sense of urgency. And then, of course, some of the news reports help with that as well. So I think people more and more are becoming aware of it, and that's a very positive trend.
So what do you think's changed in the cybersecurity environment recently?
Great question, and that is one of the key things. If you're a decision maker in an organization, if you're an IT person protecting an organization, the number one thing you need to know is that things are different now. And even, again, I've been in the industry a little while, but even going back 5 years, things are very different. So 5 years ago, 10 years ago, as IT professionals, we did not worry a whole lot. We didn't spend a whole lot of time worrying about what an end user might do behind the keyboard. Because if you had a good firewall and a good antivirus policy and a few things in place, you were pretty well protected. But now that is very different. So as IT professionals, we can have every effective defense measure in the world and still not protect your organization or your network without some training and cooperation of the person actually doing the work, of the actual staff that's there. And that has definitely changed. And there's a lot of things that have caused that change, but that's the biggest change I've seen in the last 5 years.
So you talk about user error, basically. What's the primary entry point for that? Is it through email?
Not necessarily user error, because some of these attacks are very sophisticated, and without the proper training, even with the proper training, it can be difficult to detect that it's an actual attack in progress. So there's multiple types of attacks right now, and one of the things that hasn't changed a lot in the last 3 to 4 years is the general types of attacks that exist. So if you haven't heard of ransomware, ransomware is still probably the most common thing that we encounter. And ransomware, as you know, is when someone usually it comes through an email. 80% of the time it's an email. So when I go to open an email, something happens, nothing happens, maybe I don't notice what's going on. It encrypts all my files on the entire network, not just mine. So everything anybody in that company has that I have access to is now encrypted, it's locked down, and there's only 2 choices then: pay the ransom or restore everything from backup. Neither one of those are good choices, and they both take a couple of days. So that's the most common thing we see.
But doesn't somebody have to basically launch an executable somewhere on the network for that to happen?
They do, and that can happen in one of 2 ways, though. One way is that you click on a link or open an attachment in an email, which you have to do on a daily basis, and that's the key focus of our security awareness training. When to click, when not to click, how to tell, how to discern attachments that are realistic and good from things that may contain malware, how to have that sense of caution before it's too late. And so they come either through an attachment or a link or a drive-by on a website. So, there's something called malvertising. And many, I won't name names, but many major websites in the past 2 years have admitted to having advertisements on their webpage, sites that you shop at and read news on every single day. These people say, yes, we had ransomware on our website. We didn't know it. It was in the form of an ad somebody purchased. And so you don't have to click anything. You just read the news or look at things on a shopping site, and then your computer now has ransomware going to work and you don't even know it. So that's why I say it's not always a user error. It's more, user education is a big thing, and an organizational decision maker education, which we actually kind of do a separate thing just for that, for the people that make the decisions on the organization, whether that's technology, usually leadership, and what they should be thinking of.
So you actually go down, you're like working with people at the business, coaching employees and stuff like that. Is that something you personally do?
Absolutely, and I do that quite a bit. I have several coming up here in the next couple of weeks, and we do that. It's really customized to the organization. So depending on the organization, we have a couple of things right now for legal firms. We have a special security awareness training just for legal firms because we do see them to be there's a high level of attack surface on legal firms. They're a high value target. Some of the Homeland Security has come out and saying legal firms and accounting firms are both high targets for cybercrime, and we customize it to that industry. And that actually we make it qualify for continuing legal ed, so we can give incentive because people are busy. They don't always have an hour to sit down and go through training. So we try to make that so it's convenient for them. One of the biggest things that I think is effective is we work with their financial staff. And we usually do a couple of sessions for the entire firm, and then we'll meet with smaller groups. And the financial security awareness training is just imperative right now. If you have a financial staff, you have a controller and people that write checks and people have access to money, and they have not been through specialized security awareness training, your organization is vulnerable. And if you haven't had a loss yet, I hate to say it, but you're probably going to. And without that training, without that awareness, you're pretty much a sitting duck there, in my opinion.
Okay. All right, Tim, we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about some specific types of threats facing people, and then what does the bottom line mean for this, and then get to one of our topics I know we both like to talk about, which is blockchain technology.
Absolutely.
All right, so stay tuned, guys. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Dave is seeking software solutions to improve the efficiencies of his business. He knows investing in technology can give him an advantage over his competitors and create more time for him to grow the business. He has looked at off-the-shelf solutions. While decent, none of them quite meet the needs of his business. He has considered hiring software developers to initiate his project needs, but really doesn't know where to start. What is a good developer? How much should they make? How do I keep them busy? And do I really need one? He has talked to a few consulting firms and was still unsure exactly what he was getting for his money, how they would deliver, and most important, how they would support the solution after the project, and would there be any continuity for future projects. After weighing his options, Dave is still not comfortable about what he has discovered. He knows there has to be a solution that can meet his business needs, that doesn't require his business to fit into off-the-shelf solutions, doesn't require more headcount, and doesn't just stop support after the project is over. Then Dave found Linkstream, a company with high-quality onshore managed .NET developers that could provide a solution team for his needs. Dave calls to learn more. He talks with an account manager, and they identify an opportunity to explore further. A meeting is arranged with his account manager and a dedicated lead developer to learn about the business and the expectations of technology. If they identify a need, an in-depth assessment is conducted so that Linkstream can determine the value of the solution and what the right solution would be, even if that solution is not Linkstream. Now, with the help of his account manager and dedicated lead developer, Dave can determine if custom development is right for his business. More importantly, he now has a timeline, a budget, and a solution provider to complete the work. He also has an assigned account manager that will guarantee the continuity of future support of the project and of new projects. Never having to worry about the need for more office space, the cost of an employee, expensive software licenses, the hassle of reviews, or the challenges of turnover. If you ask Dave what his favorite part is, Linkstream is more than just a resource. To us, they are part of our long-term success. He knows the solutions offered by Linkstream are applicable to small and large businesses, which is a great growth alignment strategy for his team.
All right, guys, welcome back. Second segment here with Tim Weidman, the Director of Technology Services at Frankel Zacharia. We've known each other for a while, and I've been calling you Weidman.
You can call me
Weidman.
whatever you like. That's just fine.
Apologize for that. So one of the things I want to talk about is we kind of talk in a general sense, but can we talk about some of the very specific types of threats that you guys are currently seeing out there?
Sure, and I think that's important to recognize. So we talked a little bit already about ransomware. Many people by now are familiar with ransomware. It's been on the news. They had the WannaCry story on the news a month or so ago. They at least have heard the term. They know what it is. And that is still probably the most common attack we see. But some of the new attacks are very different. They're much harder to detect. So you have ransomware, which gets talked about a lot. Other than that, you have banking attacks, which do not get talked about. There's been a couple in the news, but not very many. And banking attacks are divided into two areas. One is, I call it a high-tech banking attack or a low-tech banking attack. So a high-tech banking attack is basically, I'll use the word virus, although it's not a correct description, but it's a virus or it's malware that gets on your computer through an email attachment or a link you click or a website you browse, and it waits for something. It waits for you to log into your bank account or your other financial institution, and then it takes the money directly out of there, usually in a matter of seconds, and usually it's instantaneous and irreversible. So that's an attack most people aren't aware of. So the first advice there is if you think you have malware, if you think you've had a problem, there's something suspicious going on, don't log into your bank account. And one of our first incident response questions we ask is, okay, so you've had an issue, you saw a screen, it said you had a virus. Have you logged into any financial institutions since this happened? We ask that right away, and quite often, more than you think, the answer is, well, yeah, I had to do a wire transfer. I had to log in and check my balance. I had to write a check. And then when they look back, that money then is gone, or there's been an attempt, or it's been a successful attempt to remove those funds.
What is this is a kind of little side question here. What do you think of these password aggregators like LastPass? Do you recommend those to customers or not?
Well, password policy, the important thing is to look at that in the context of your entire password policy. So if you don't have a password policy, that may be good or bad, depending on the situation. There's a lot, and we do in our security awareness training, we do a whole little mini section on passwords. And this is meant to be, it's not for the IT administrator, it's for the person who has to put the password in every day. So you're going to have a lot of passwords. And I'll tell you one thing on that. The biggest advice I have on passwords is in your organization, at your corporation, at your company, your computer you do your work on every day, that needs to have a different password than anything else. However you get to that point, whether it's through a password a keeper or a password system, you cannot have the same password there that you had on, and without naming a whole lot of names, but you see these in the news. If you had the same password there as you did on Yahoo, Yahoo has admitted 500 million passwords were stolen. Okay, it's not hard to figure out that you're that same guy on Yahoo. They don't have to guess your password. They can buy it. I mean, it's for sale on the dark web. So if you've got the same password at work as you do someplace else, someone else probably which place hasn't been broken into, that you go down the list. All these places admit their passwords have been stolen. So they don't have to break in. They just use a password you've already used somewhere that they can buy, illicitly, and then they log in as you, and you're compromised.
Okay. So one last question here about the security. What is the bottom line, basically? If you're a small business owner, medium-sized business owner, maybe a large business owner, what would you say? What would be the number one thing you could tell them to take away from this?
Well, the bottom line, and there's a lot to cybersecurity, and it changes on a regular basis. But the bottom line is this. If you are a decision maker at an organization and you have done nothing different in the past year, or in the past 5 years, but even in the past year, if you're doing the same things that you've always done, most of the technology we use today has been around a while. Computers and spreadsheets and email have been around for decades now. And if you're doing the same thing you were 5 years ago, and it's just assuming you're secure, that assumption is wrong, because things have changed. The cyber criminals are much better armed and prepared. They have new techniques, and the things you've always done don't work to defend yourself unless you sit down and say, if I were to ask you the question, what is your cyber defense strategy? And you don't have an answer to that, you're looking for trouble, and that's something you need to have an answer to.
One thing, real quick comment here. I've heard that some of the attacks are getting a lot more sophisticated. If you think like 10 years ago, you got the email from the Nigerian prince, and I think a lot of people are kind of wise to that stuff now, but I've heard they're really going like casing out your Facebook page and finding out information about you and then sort of targeting you specifically.
Yeah, great point. And that is one of the things that are very different now, because the cyber criminals have made a lot of money. By some estimates, hundreds of billions of dollars in the last few years. Now, it's pretty hard to estimate that. I don't think they file a return so you can get their income. But because of that, now they have more resources. We are seeing very personalized attacks. And you mentioned the phishing email and the scam. We're seeing very targeted attacks, and this I'll call the non-high-tech attack, or the low-tech attack. So instead of that email saying I'm a foreign prince and I want you to take this money, insanely complicated. So I had one case where the attackers had cased the company for 6 months. They had registered 9 different fake domains to attack this one company. And these domains were just the one letter off from their vendors, from their customers, from their friends, trying to get them to believe these emails they were sending. In the end, and this is a company that we support, so they'd had security awareness training. In the end, the cyber criminals could not get them to fall for anything. At least they haven't yet, and they couldn't through this prolonged attack. So they went after their customers and sent emails to all their customers that owed them money, saying, you need to pay us money. And this is so-and-so, and here's my new bank wiring address. I've seen people call companies and say, I am the wife of one of your retirees, and he has a new bank account for his ACH. So this is not even using a computer. It's over the phone, and here's the information. And you don't think you'd fall for something like that, but people are busy, and these people are professionals. They're not – this isn't some kid in your parents' basement anymore.
Let me ask you, where are these people? Is it mostly overseas?
Well, if you knew that – I'll tell you one instance, and this is not that well known. They could be anywhere. So the Zeus banking Trojan, which is one of the largest banking Trojans in the history of cyber crime, billions of dollars, is reportedly through the banks. And I got this from the local FBI office here, who brought it up as one of their presentations. So they eventually arrested 2 people involved in that. And this is why you shouldn't really toy around with cyber criminals a lot, because they arrested them. Their home base at that time was in Omaha, Nebraska. And that was in the news very, very little. It was a few years back. And so they were right here. They were, I believe, from Russia originally, or from a former USSR country. But they had, maybe they liked the weather better here. So they were based in Omaha when they arrested them in Lincoln, actually, but they were based in Omaha. So they could be anywhere. It's a global internet. So where you're at is not really relevant.
That's a good point. All right, so let's talk about one of the fun things that we like to talk about. You mentioned ransomware before, and people don't know about that. It's basically they come in, encrypt all your files, and then they want to get paid to unencrypt it. And the way they get paid is through Bitcoin generally. So I know Tim and I both have a passion for blockchain. Here at Linkstream, we've been doing a lot of research and done some projects in the Ethereum blockchain where you can actually write code and you can put smart contracts into the blockchain and execute those. So there's a whole thing going on. So it's really interesting. Just tell me a little bit about your interest in blockchain, maybe Bitcoin in specific, or if it even goes beyond Bitcoin.
Sure. Well, to start with, cryptocurrency is the term I use, and that kind of just goes over a lot of people. They know the term Bitcoin. Some people call it digital currency. My interest in that first developed as a result of cybersecurity because one of the things that's changed in the cybersecurity world is that you now have the ability to receive funding pretty much anonymously. So you mentioned where are these people at? Well, we don't know that anymore. 20 years ago, if I were going to be a cyber criminal and I wanted to get paid for it, I wanted to do it as a profit motive, at some point I had to go to the bank or show up and then I would be arrested. Well, now I can receive funds anonymously. So that is kind of where Bitcoin first made the news and became on my horizon, was because in a couple of cases we got called into, we had to pay the ransom, so we had to get Bitcoin. And so that was a learning curve there as well.
Do you recommend your clients to have some Bitcoin on hand just in case?
It depends on the situation. So that has been a recommendation in some cases. Bitcoin is now becoming easier to get. So 6 months ago, that would have been a higher recommendation than it is now. Before, when it took 2 weeks to get a Bitcoin purchase, now it's a little bit easier. What I do recommend is that our clients, is that anybody, if you're in the technology industry, if you're in the accounting industry, if you're in really any business, and you have no idea what a Bitcoin is or what blockchain is, this is my belief is that this technology is going to change our world. And it's going to change your world. And the industry, the people in whatever industry you're in that become comfortable and familiar with this now are going to have a competitive edge. You mentioned, I didn't know you're developing things for blockchain technology.
I'll talk. Ethereum is actually one of the things I'm most excited about. Is if you think about what a Bitcoin transaction is, it's almost like an executable. You're saying you're transferring this bit of information to this other account. So there's some sort of transaction going there. What they did with Ethereum, instead of putting just transactions from one account to another, you can actually execute smart contracts. So it's like its own programming language. And what you do is you write this code and you put it off into a block and it actually gets mined into this massive distributed network. And now anybody in the world can go and execute that code forever. Like it's kind of like chiseled in stone. So when I first started learning about this stuff, like the Bitcoin was cool. This is like a whole nother level of mind blowing. So that's one of my things is get into Ethereum too. But I'm
really glad to see you're in that. Many development companies haven't gotten on that bandwagon yet. I call it a bandwagon. It's not really a bandwagon. It's the wave of the future. And that is fantastic that you're already doing that. I mean, that to me, I think, is ahead of the curve.
It's going to change, I think, a lot of things with like contract law, even like trademark. Think about this. If you can put bits of information on the blockchain. So if you go out and put some bit of information on saying, hey, I was using this trademark tag or this website or this catchphrase at this certain time, well, you can go prove that. Because that was mined and put on this distributed blockchain that's all around the world now. Nobody can fake it because it's a blockchain. That's the whole nature of it. So
one out of many uses for block. And and here's the other recommendation I'll give: if you don't know the first thing about blockchain or Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, and almost everyone I talk to doesn't, start learning now. Okay, just take 20 minutes and start with what is a Bitcoin. What is blockchain? Because you can't really learn it all at once, as I'm sure you know. It's something you really have to absorb in small pieces because there's so much information there. And if you get started on it, you will see how this is going to change your world.
So I'll ask this question. I'm not sure how far we can go with it, but I know you're not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. But what do you think are some of the legal ramifications? I know a lot of people are kind of interested in Bitcoin and all these other things, but there's kind of concern, like, is the government going to crack down on it, or is it completely, I've had people ask, is it legal? It is legal, but do you have any opinions on where this is going to go and how it's going to be in a political sphere?
Boy, that's the question of the day. But and again, things you see make the news. Okay, the rapid increase in Bitcoin, makes the news. You see the bad parts where Bitcoin is heisted and things like that, and that could all change. Bitcoin may come and go. I don't know, but again, I can tell you. Blockchain technology, and Bitcoin is really what started it. The original dissertation on Bitcoin started the whole thing. And that technology, that concept is here to stay. So whether Bitcoin is suddenly, the SEC now has talked about certain types of transactions, that could happen. If I could predict that, I'd be doing great. But what I do know is if the concept isn't going anywhere, and I encourage anybody who's not comfortable with it to start somewhere and learn a little bit about it.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, is there anything else? Before we go, actually, we usually give you guys a chance. How can listeners, learn more about Frankel Zacharia, their security services, any of the services they offer? What's the best way to find out more and get a hold of you guys?
Great. Thank you. Easiest way is to go to uplinkme.com. So uplinkme.com. So like you're uplinkingme.com. If you remember that, that'll take it. We have that because it's easier for people to remember how to spell than Frankel Zacharia. So that's just kind of a shortcut to our technology services page.
Okay. Is there any way, like, if people want to get a hold of you personally, or do you want to?
From that page, they can get a hold of me personally.
Page.
Yes,
Okay.
if they can make it to that page, they can get a hold of me. You can find Frankel Zacharia, of course, as well. And we're a growing firm, but we're not that large. If you call up and ask for Tim, they'll know who you're asking. I'm the only Tim there, so they'll be able to find me. And I'm glad to talk to anybody.
Okay. Thanks, Tim, for coming on the show.
Thanks
for
you.
tuning in.